Angela Kocherga, Borderlands Director for Cronkite News, traveled to the border with our reporters and photojournalists working on stories about the poll results. She joins us now to talk about the poll. Why do the poll, and why do it now?
Well, Joey, as we know, the border's always a hot-button political issue, but especially during an election year. There's a lot of talk about the border from candidates. We wanted to hear from people who live on the border to get their views and their voices. And so a company, Basilisk, based in Austin, a polling company, talked to people all along the border in 14 cities, more than 1,400 respondents to get their views. And in Arizona, the views came from Nogales and also from Yuma and the sister cities on the Mexican side of the border.
Of course, the border wall is a big national issue, and we're seeing a lot of residents on the Mexican side of the border and the U.S. side of the border are both against building a wall.
There were two questions. Do you think it's important to build a wall? Overwhelmingly no. And should the U.S. build a wall to secure the border? And the answer was also no. A majority of respondents. We talked to people, interviewed people in the field. It's not that people living on the border want an open border, that they don't see the problems. They just tell us that they see the wall as not very practical, and we heard over and over again that it's a very simplistic solution to some complex issues, the issues of people crossing the border, sneaking across the border to work, or smuggling of drugs. We've seen, of course, tunnels in Nogales, and we also have seen, one of the stories our reporters worked on, growers in Yuma having a really hard time finding workers who could work illegally. So there's a labor shortage. So people are enticed across the border to fill those jobs. Border residents say the talk is not dealing with any of the solutions, dealing with the demand for labor or the demand for drugs, drug abuse or drug addiction.
So we saw that those are things that Mexican and U.S. residents agree upon. But what about any differences? Is there anything that surprised you about what the results yielded?
Probably not surprising for someone who's lived on the border and worked covering stories all along the border, but there is a real difference when it comes to public safety. In Mexico, that was the top concern for residents. They don't feel safe. And then the other question that really stands out is, one question said, do you trust law enforcement in your country? On the Mexican side, 76% said no. And on the flip side, in the U.S., we had more than 80% of people saying, yes, I do trust law enforcement along the border. So that's a huge difference. Overwhelmingly, though, we see a lot of similarities, more similarities than differences. And one big one is, again, a majority said they thought the tone of the presidential race is hurting U.S. Mexico relations.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Angela. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joey.